You're listening to the Shared Security Podcast with Tom Eston and Scott Wright, exploring the trust you put in people, apps, and technology.
Hosted by Scott Wright, the Streetwise security coach, and Tom Eston, penetration tester and ethical hacker. And sponsored by Security Perspectives, your source for tailored security awareness training and assessment solutions. We bring you stories, advice, and tips to help you make better risk decisions because nobody else can make them for you.
Episode 56. When you're really lonely, why not confide in a chat bot? They will always listen if you let them.
Hello and welcome to the Shared Security Podcast for August 17th, 2016. I think we're on episode 56. Is that right, Tom?
It is 56.
Excellent. Well, I'm Scott Wright, the Streetwise security coach up here in sunny Ottawa, Canada, and down in sunny Cleveland. Is it
sunny and humid?
Sunny,
yeah,
humid.
Sunny and humid, actually. Yeah.
Great. Well, yeah, we've got Mr. Tom Eston, as usual, a connoisseur of kitty cats, I hear. So...
Yes, I am. We are now a foster family for a mom and her kittens.
Cool.
So,
excellent.
Yeah, exciting times.
We got enough cats on our hands that don't behave themselves. So we're not ready to take any more in at the moment. But well, that's good. Good for the family. Gotta love cats. Now, some people don't, but
some people don't. But it's good to help the local APL out with kind of their overflow problems. So
yes,
lots of puppies and lots of kittens to adopt.
Good stuff to do for the community. So I guess we've got a few interesting topics to cover this week or this month or whatever, however often it is that we come out with this episode.
Almost every month.
That's what I tell people. It's not as easy as
try
saying
really
monthly, but
hard. That's right.
We got to fix that tagline. Anyway. So a few stories we're going to cover today. First one is something that's a little bit new that I came across, and I'd like to get Tom's take on it and anybody else who has comments on it. It's something called Bitmoji. It's sort of a new little app, combination avatar and emoji facility, which is kind of fun, but it has an interesting security question that comes along with it that we're going to talk about. We also have something on industrial control systems, the industrial side of the Internet of Things. And any comments on that, Tom?
Oh, yeah. There's we could probably do a whole episode on that one. But that's just I thought this was interesting, some of this research that Kaspersky had done on how vulnerable are these critical systems that are out there controlling our power, our infrastructure, and it's kind of surprising.
Yeah, and scary. So, speaking of scary, how about self-driving cars?
Yeah, ironically, I have a friend that has a Tesla, and that would be a good interview, actually, and he's a security person, to get his take on this. But
you could interview him. You could interview him in the car while it's driving itself.
I could do that, actually. Yeah.
And we'll see if Tom will be back the next week.
That's right. Yeah. So unfortunately, in this article, it was in the news a couple weeks ago. The first traffic death was linked to the self-driving feature in the Tesla electric car. So we'll talk a little bit about that and
some tips on if you have a self-driving car, how to reduce the risk of getting killed.
That's right.
All right. And then we have something, just out of the Orlando tragedy, we had a little bit of news out of Facebook where they're making more use of their safety check feature.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing.
It is, yeah. And as well, Twitter is doing some good stuff too, I think. Well, I guess it depends on how it's implemented or how it gets used, but their blue tick of validity, I guess you call it, where people will be able to verify their Twitter identity so that their friends know it's really them. So we'll chat about that a little bit. And a happy story, actually, about a kid who was wearing a smartwatch and amazingly was almost kidnapped, but he was able to use the watch to alert his parents or something like that. We'll cover that story in a little more detail. Good news, though.
Okay. Yeah.
And a special feature that I thought might be fun to talk about, because there's a little more in the news these days about chat bots and machine learning and stuff like that. So I thought it would be worth just visiting a few questions around chat bots if people haven't heard too much about that yet.
Yeah, that's cool.
And anything else, Tom, you wanted to add to the agenda?
No, I think this is a great set of topics.
Oh, there was
this
the one
episode.
I think you mentioned, Delta Airlines outage. We wanted
Yeah, we can bring that up when we talk about chatbots. It's,
good.
related.
Okay, it's related. That's right. Okay, I wouldn't have guessed it was related, but we have the inside scoop from Mr. Tom Eston. So we'll cover that towards the end. So, yeah, let's start out with the story about Bitmoji. So it's kind of interesting. I only came across this. Had you heard of it before, Tom?
Yeah, so are you talking about like the different application, like third-party applications that can be installed in your phone to replace the keyboard?
In a sense, yeah, it does do that. I mean, that's not the purpose of it. The purpose really is, it's kind of a fun thing. One of my close friends started using this feature, and it's really a way of enhancing the use of emojis, I guess, if you want to call it that, where basically it's a combination of an avatar and an emoji. So you dress up your avatar to make it look as close to yourself as you can, and put it in whatever apparel you'd like and things like that. And then you use that to create graphics that are like emojis. So for just about any different situation, you can it'll come up with stuff for, if you're feeling sorry for somebody, for something you did, or if you're going on a trip or whatever, it basically automatically dresses up your avatar or your emoji to look like it's actually experiencing whatever it is that you're feeling.
It.
And I mean, there are a couple of ways to implement it. One is just to copy it and paste it into your email or your text or whatever other kind of communication you're doing. I think they were actually recently bought by Snapchat, so there's going to be some kind of integration there, I guess, with Snapchat, because Snapchat has a lot of stuff like that where it dresses up your picture when you take a picture of yourself. These filters. So anyway, it was all fun. Of course, I had to try it out to get the first-hand experience and check it out for security. And of course, towards the end of it, as it's wrapping up its completion of the process, it says, "Oh, and by the way, please install this as a keyboard on your smartphone or tablet. And when it asks you, just say allow all privileges." And so then I went, "What?" So it sort of takes us into a realm I'm sure that you've covered before, but might be good to explain to people, what the implications of that really are.
Yeah, allow full access usually means what it says it means, but what it really means is essentially you may be giving information to a third party or a developer, or some of that information may actually be sent off in various ways to somebody else, essentially, right?
Right.
There is some debate about how that information may be used. Most likely it's probably not going to be used for nefarious purposes, but it becomes a privacy issue, right? So do you want to allow Bitmoji or other information to be shared with maybe a third party that you don't know who that is?
Right. And I should just add that the reason, I guess, that they want to be added as a keyboard is it just makes it easier for you to pick the appropriate, it puts a little gallery up just like all the other emojis in your tablet or smartphone keyboard. So it just makes it easier for you to use that particular feature. It's not essential. And the article that I am linking to that'll be in our show notes actually discusses somebody puts a discussion to it around what are the real risks of this. And apparently, according to the article, Apple actually takes over as a keyboard when you're doing sensitive operations. It at least the ones it can tell, right? So if it knows that you're about to enter a password or a credit card number or something, apparently it switches back to an Apple keyboard. and therefore the third party doesn't see that information as it's being typed. But I don't know if I would put 100% confidence in that all the time. You never know when that criteria may slip through the cracks of their testing and whatever. There could be a vulnerability there. So I tend to use, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to just use the cut and paste, from the app itself.
Yeah.
So that's a safer way to do it, I think.
Yeah, that's just I get a little weary with these third-party integrations that try to replace like keyboards and other things.
Well, it's like the old browser toolbars, right? That for emojis, similar kinds of risks.
Exactly. So until there is a more secure way of doing it, or again, it's risk versus reward. So there is some maybe slight risk, but I think most people are just probably going to, use it and, probably have no issues. But again, awareness.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. So just be careful out there when you're having fun with your emojis and avatars and things. Next story is actually on a more serious side. The, Industrial Control Systems, ICS. There was a study done by Kaspersky, and they found something kind of interesting. Do you want to chat about that a bit?
Yeah, they found that over 90% of ICS devices exposed to the internet are vulnerable. I would first say that why are all of these devices being exposed to the internet in the first place? This is a common, very, very common issue that goes kind of beyond ICS systems, but I think we've talked about that tool that's out there, the Shodan search engine.
Yes.
Where you can find these devices that are just kind of hanging out there on the internet. Oftentimes they're hanging out on the internet because whoever installed the system usually forgot to disable either a web interface or some other type of port or service that is advertising itself out to the entire internet. More so these days, we're seeing new systems that don't do this by default, but a lot of these industrial control systems, or sometimes they're known as SCADA systems, are just legacy systems that really haven't been updated in years, and they're just kind of sitting around. And so that's another reason why they're found vulnerable, is because they are just being exposed to the internet by default.
Yeah, I think there's probably I would say a significant push these days across the industries, the utility industries especially, to try and strengthen and secure any of their exposed networks. But it just seems surprising that we keep seeing more and more of these stories pop up where things have been exposed for some time and nobody knew about it. So it's a sad thing, but I think we got to keep the pressure on these public authorities to keep their systems secure. I can understand how it sometimes happens, especially when you're putting up a new system like that. You can imagine people trying to test it, and of course, the testers, the last thing they do when they leave is always lock up and clean up nicely, right?
Right. Yeah, always happens.
That's Tom's job, is to find those problems. Sure. But they tend to leave the doors open.
Yeah, the other surprising thing about this and some of this research in this article, a lot of these vulnerabilities, like the number one vulnerability here is hard-coded credentials in this SUNY web box. I'm not exactly sure what that is, as this is some form of ICS system, but hard-coded credentials, that's a huge problem, which goes back to the way that developers and engineers design these pieces of hardware and these control systems. Hard-coded credentials, that's a pretty big vulnerability going back to the design, right?
Exactly.
And it can't change that.
Exactly. And it's information like that people don't think about, because if you are, for example, testing and you've only got the test environment, exposed at the moment, but you have real live data that's in your test environment, and the hackers are easily able to get into that environment because it hasn't been locked down well enough, and they pick up some of that information like credentials, then they might be able to use that to break into the operational side, right?
Right, exactly. And this also becomes a vulnerability that's harder to patch and fix because it's built into the hardware itself or into the application or even into the source code in some cases, and it becomes a huge problem and huge undertaking to fix.
Yep. So yeah, it's something we're gonna have to keep an eye on, and it's probably gonna get worse before it gets better, unfortunately. But that's life. So, all right, and even more tragic stuff: the Tesla self-driving story.
Yeah, I think most people have probably heard about this in the news. It was actually back in July if this happened, but it was probably a matter of time that with the technology, there's always going to be accidents and mishaps and things that do go wrong, and things happen that aren't predicted by the creators of technology. And this one was just tragic. Just a gentleman died in his Tesla. Essentially, what happened, and it's kind of interesting to read the story. The autopilot or the driver didn't notice that there was a tractor trailer that was overturning essentially on the freeway, and it was white. The side of the trailer was white, and there was also a sun glare happening at the same time. So the computer didn't recognize this as a concern and just kept driving, and essentially the car went underneath the tractor trailer and crushed it, killing the driver. But again, it's one of those circumstances that the computer was not programmed to account for a situation like that, because it's such a rare thing that could happen on the road. Statistically. So again, it kind of goes back to the limits of even with the greatest technology in the world. And honestly, what Tesla has been working on, I mean, is truly revolutionary with their autopilot technology. But there is always room for error.
Yeah, hate to say it's the bleeding edge, right? That's why they call it that sometimes.
Right. And honestly, no fault to Tesla, because Tesla does say that it's still in beta. You should always have your hands on the wheel, even in autopilot mode. And if you decide to take your hands off the wheel and not control your vehicle, that's really on you as the driver. And so you kind of accept that liability and accept that risk. But that's my advice. And I know, talking with a friend that has a Tesla, reading some of his Facebook posts after this accident happened, he was even saying himself that, I really don't take my hands off the wheel. It's kind of cool for a second, but, you got to know the limits, that something could completely happen out of the blue that the computer is not going to be able to account for.
Yeah, it's unfortunately something that if you're going to be an early adopter, you're going to have to expect problems. And when you're going 70 miles an hour, it's kind of hard to do much in a short time. So
yeah, and the article kind of summarizes with, is this a setback for this type of technology? And I would say no. I think this is the kind of the evolution of all technology and how things work. I mean, if you look at the space program, for example, how many astronauts have died, getting into space. I mean, that's kind of, and it gets safer, right, over the years, but there's still accidents that can happen and horrible things. But that is how things evolve, right? Maybe one day in the future, far in the future, that self-driving cars are going to be like,
well, I have no doubt that at some point they'll be safer than the cars that are driven by people that are doing it manually. But as you said, it will be a lot of setbacks, I think, along the way as we learn the glitches and the risks along the way. So, anyways, it's a good article people should read, especially before you try and drive a self-driving car. So, all right, and I think our next story is talking about, what is it?
That's the Facebook safety check.
Oh, the Facebook safety check, yeah. So this is something we did mention before, right?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, it's a good thing that Facebook has started putting out there that I believe the way it works is if you were posting, I guess, in the area of like a disaster or a mass shooting or something like that, Facebook gives you the option to inform your friends and family that you're okay. They call it kind of a safety check.
So it's not really something that you would invoke voluntarily as a user, right? It's Facebook clearly is monitoring trends, and I guess they look for incidents, major incidents, and when they decide that it's something that's serious enough where people might have been injured or killed, then they activate it in that area, I guess, for people that are in that locale, so that they can take advantage of the feature.
Yeah, it's interesting. The article will link. It kind of talks about how it works, but I believe it identifies, any of your friends in your friend list that might be in that area of, like for example, they were talking about the shooting in Orlando, Florida. It will notify you, and you can actually reach out to those friends to check, through Facebook if they're okay. And then also on the other side, if you're in that area, you can notify your friends and family that you're okay.
Right. Yeah, so it just takes the guesswork out of whether you're still at your phone or conscious or whatever. Right? So good.
Yeah, I think this is a great feature. I really do.
And speaking of features on social media, Twitter's blue tick to verify your identity, which has been pretty popular, I think, for a long time with celebrities, right? Or any public figures. Because it wasn't very long after Twitter got popular that people started making impersonator accounts, and it became pretty hard to tell who was the real Barack Obama or whatever.
That's right. Yeah. I remember talking about this back in the day when we were all on the social media bandwagon, and when Twitter first came out. In fact, it was pretty easy when they first released this little blue checkbox or tick or whatever you want to call it. People were actually changing their profile pictures to embed a little blue tick in the picture. And they would create a fake account from a celebrity or something, and people would go around, and then Twitter changed where the tick is, and made it a little bit harder to fake.
Yes.
But the good news about this is a request that many people have had for a long time, and Twitter is slowly kind of revealing how they verify accounts for celebrities and famous people and all of that. So now anybody can actually go and request a verified account. You don't necessarily have to be a celebrity. You could be just, a normal Joe like Scott and I.
Yeah.
And they will ask you questions. They still don't go into a ton of detail, but they do say that they will most likely ask you for, a copy of a government issued ID, passport, driver's license, something like that, to verify who you are, you say you are. And you can fill out a form now, and it takes about 30 days or so.
Now, do they charge for that service?
No, apparently they don't charge for it.
You would think that would be like a no-brainer, that it's an easy way for them to make money, right? Well, you want to be verified, just to pay $5 or $10 or whatever and get your
right.
I don't know why they wouldn't. But.
Yeah, in the for science, I may actually submit myself to this form. So,
well, hey, shouldn't the hosts of a social media security podcast be verified or verifiable?
I agree. We may not be famous, but I think it's a good thing to do. So I will report back with the results, and maybe I'll have the blue tick.
Sure. Well, let me know how it goes, and I may do it too. Cool. Depending on how painful it is.
The blue tick, that sounds like a disease or something you get like when you go out in the woods or something. Blue tick disease.
or a bad computer bug, the blue tick of death.
Yeah.
Anyways. Okay. Well, I think it's good news in general.
It is. And it's good it's always been good for like celebrities and famous people, because there's always impersonators out there. I had done a lot of research on impersonators back in the day, which actually kind of segues, we want to talk about now, but chat bots, right?
Yeah.
I had developed a chat bot on Twitter that would interact with people. I developed actually a couple of them back in the day. And I used it as kind of a research project to see how people are susceptible and social engineered into, giving away information and thinking that they're actually talking to a human when in fact they're talking to a bot.
Yeah. Yep. So, well, we will be working on fixing that problem soon. We'll get right on it.
That's right.
Another happier story is, well, in a way happy, but sad that it happened in the first place. But I guess a child who was about to be kidnapped happened to be wearing a smartphone. Was it an iPhone or not an iPhone? A smartwatch. I don't recall exactly which brand.
I don't know what
watch
type
it
of
was.
smartwatch. Yeah,
It was a smartwatch, but I guess the idea was they invested in the watch rather than a full smartphone. And the kid wears it, and he's about to get kidnapped. He managed to escape and use the smartwatch to call for help and notify his parents. And so it, in some ways, was very helpful that he had that bit of smart technology on him.
yeah, that's really cool. It's good to see, because there's smartwatches and those things kind of get a bad rap.
Just
they're
you're
known
saying
for
that because
being-
you have one, right?
I do. I love my Pebble. I know I haven't really given much of a review of it on the show, but
Well, you should.
I should. I will summarize that right now. Actually,
Okay, there you go. We'll make space.
It is a great. I've really enjoyed using it. I actually find it very useful. I don't have to carry my phone with me all over the place, all over the house.
So is it the
I'm not
thing that
tied
tracks
to it.
you when you do your runs and you post them on Facebook?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That too. So I can, easily see, how far I'm going, my running workout distance, those types of things. It's just really handy. And I think it just makes the things I do a little bit easier. And yeah, I get a lot of use out of it. So
That's cool.
I see a huge benefit in them.
So aside
And we're-
from like tracking you when you're running, can you give us an idea of one or two things that in a typical day you'd use it for?
Getting text messages is and announcements. So anything that shows up on your phone as like a push notification.
Okay. So instead
you
of
can
pulling your
get-
phone out to look at it, you just got it on your wrist.
Right.
Oh, that's cool.
Exactly.
And it
Yeah.
goes by
And you can
Bluetooth?
goes by Bluetooth, and you can reply to. And I have the Pebble Classic watch, and so it doesn't have a whole lot of features, but you kind of sacrifice that for long battery life. But you can reply to text messages through kind of some canned messages, yes, no, call me later, those types of things. It's handy. So if you're in a meeting or on another call or something like that, you can, especially if someone's trying to get a hold of you, there's a urgent issue, you can kind of reply back, and makes multitasking a little bit easier. But yeah, cool. I think it's been good.
It's almost like it's more of an ergonomic advantage than some major technical leap, right? In terms of doing a lot of new things.
Yeah, but I think personally I like the Pebble just because it's very simplified compared to like the Apple Watch, which seems to be the complaints I hear from people that have Apple Watches are that it's well, first of all, expensive, and then two, the battery life isn't very good. I get almost 5 days of battery life on my Pebble, and it's fully waterproof, so you can take it on a swim or in the shower. Yeah,
nice,
it's nice,
very good. Well, maybe I'll get one of those someday too. We're just all following Tom. Tom's the leader.
Oh, no.
All right. Well, so our last major topic is going to be chatbots. And I think we've mentioned it a few times. I'm not sure that we spent a lot of time talking about what a chatbot really is, or if it's a brand name of something. Is it only associated with one product, or is it a generic thing, or is it like a Kleenex thing where it's a term that we use for everything in a certain area? So I actually wrote a little blog post on my website about machine learning and chatbots in general, and mostly it was related to the fact that the information that is being collected about you now to be used, to make your life easier, interpret your voice commands and things, all depends on learning about you and the things that you enter or speak. And then some of that information has to go up to the cloud for them to actually process it. So as a bit of a background, that's how I sort of got thinking about this problem. But I thought it would be a good topic for us to talk about a little bit on the podcast.
Yeah, it's a very, very cool topic. And it's something that I would say we're seeing a lot more use of. So these chatbots and lots of different types of applications, not necessarily, internet things, right? But we're talking about AI essentially.
Sure. Like my car, for example, I
Right.
guess has the ability to interpret voice commands, although not very well.
Hmm.
But
Yeah. Same here.
so I guess how do we start? Can you define what a chatbot is? Is it a feature? I've heard it was a feature on Facebook. Is it, or is it across many different platforms?
Lots of different platforms. I mean, chatbots really go back in the day to if you're familiar with the IRC chat rooms of kind of first the internet. The first ways to really chat and communicate with others on the internet were that's really where chatbots evolved from, right? So you could chat to a bot in a chat room and you would get some information back. So you could maybe ask it a question, right? You could say, hey, where is the location for this, or send me GPS coordinates for this location, and you get the GPS coordinates back. Very simple types of things. You can compare it nowadays to Siri, on your iPhone, or Google search, where you're actually talking into an AI type of device or technology, and then out comes back information. So
I guess it could have even evolved from was it fax back services, right? You used to be able to fax or a number or call a number and then choose a selection, and it would fax back a sheet of information for you on whatever selection it was. So just sort of automated responses. But I guess what you're saying, I think the first one that I saw that was more technologically advanced was when you could text something to Google's text number, right? And they would come back with a search response. I can't remember what kinds of things you could ask it at the time initially, but I guess that's where it sort of started to evolve from there.
And they're used on the phone too, right? So you've called, help desks and support for different services, and you'll get that, automated, AI that basically says, please tell us about your problem, and we'll direct your call. And then you say, do you want to speak to an operator? And you say operator, and you say it really slow, and they still can't understand you. And then they come back and says, we can't understand what you're saying. Say it again. And that's a chatbot.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
They're annoying.
I didn't understand your response.
Right.
Yeah. So they're getting better, apparently.
They are getting better. It is interesting the many uses of chatbots, and also some of my research in past years was around the abuse of chatbots. I'm not talking about just beating them up, right? We're talking about how they can be abused. And we've mentioned this in the podcast, I think just in the last couple episodes. You remember the Microsoft AI on Twitter? It was a Twitter bot, which essentially became a chat bot, and it would chat with you. And people were getting the bot to say things that it wasn't designed to say. So they're being used quite a bit more. There was a story, and we may have mentioned it in the past, that Ashley Madison breach, that adult cheater websites that got a lot of publicity. It came out after this big hack that this company enlisted chatbots to interact with all the men that were using this site, to basically dupe the men to think that they were talking to actual females, but in fact they were talking to bots on their own systems.
So they didn't have to pay anybody to be
exactly, because these sites are notoriously 90% men and maybe if that 10% women. So they developed this chatbot system to basically trick all the men thinking that these bots are real women. And so that again is showing kind of the evolution of the various uses, whether legal or not, but they've gotten to a point where they're almost seamless, right? To at least for a certain point that they're believable, right? They're almost you can't. It's harder to tell now who's a human and who's a bot when you're interacting with these systems on the internet these days.
Especially if it's in a text mode or something where you can't actually hear them or see them, right?
Right. All those online boxes that pop up and say, chat to a service representative.
Yeah.
Most of those are bots these days.
Yep. So you can abuse them all you want. I mean, I don't know what the different political. I don't know which political party is more in favor of reducing abuse against chatbots, but That's a personal decision. So I guess just to go a little step further, then when we talk about chatbots in terms of their security or privacy risks, I think there's a couple of things that we probably should point out. One of them is that when you're entering information, either talking or typing, you can imagine that the client software on whatever device it is collecting as much information about you as it can, and the objective is to be able to serve you better, right? To provide better answers, more accurate responses, more relevant ads, or whatever it is. And so the client itself, the software on the device, only has a certain limited capability. It probably has a pretty big database that it can act on independently, but at some point it needs to actually consult with a smarter, more powerful database somewhere else on the internet. And at that point, it's going to send information, whether it's in its raw form that you entered or its own sort of compressed version, back to the cloud where its mothership analyzes it. So the risks there are really on the transmission of that information over the internet, whether it's done securely or not, and then how secure is that site that it's going to, and what are their policies around who they share that information with, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So I just wondered if you had any thoughts on how things are going in that direction, or should we be worried, or what kinds of precautions could we even take if we're concerned about those things?
Well, the biggest concern I see out there with chatbots is kind of the again, people abusing them and then making them do things that they weren't designed to do. Just like with the Microsoft example. Things are designed for good purposes, but as we know, silly hackers and, curious humans like to tinker and toy with things. I would be just getting more concerned with this type of technology that's implemented in, things that are designed for life-saving or healthcare or, keeping your lights on in your house, things that are really going to impact you physically, because now that this is being used more, there's just more opportunities for it to be abused. So going back to how these systems and are designed and programmed with security and privacy in mind,
right?
I don't think we're seeing that yet, because again, it's the evolution of chatbots are really it's really changing, and with AI and how that technology has evolved, they're getting smarter, but also more ripe for more abuse. So, but then and I'd also say from the security standpoint, like anything you use on the internet, you should be aware of. There is always the potential that this information can be shared. It can be siphoned off. It could be intercepted, because you don't always know when you're in a chat room with a bot, just like you're in a chat room with a human. They could have the same vulnerabilities around the transfer of anything that you're typing. So it's really a lot of the same risks that you have just using the internet in general. I wouldn't say there's anything special or different about interacting with a chatbot, but more so be aware of the information that comes back from a chatbot you may not want to completely rely on.
Yeah. And I think also it's another way you can look at it is similar to the way we did with the Tesla and the new technology in cars. Every time there's a new advancement in technology, not all the wrinkles have been ironed out, and we don't know necessarily what all the potential vulnerabilities are or the different ways that they could be exploited. So as a user, on early adopting, you want to be careful about what kind of information and what kind of uses you put the technology to, just because you could be putting yourself at risk. And there are some of the technologies in, for example, messaging apps like WhatsApp, right, have started to really become more knowledgeable and more secure, where they are able to offer end-to-end security, for example. So as you're chatting with somebody on WhatsApp, nobody else, if you've turned on that secure feature, nobody else in between you and the person you're talking to can actually decrypt or understand what's going on. And that includes any of the monitoring facilities in between that might otherwise be looking for information that could help you. For example, if it's trying to learn about automated responses that it might want to give you, if it can't see it because it's encrypted, which is a good thing for you, you may lose some functionality. So when I'm doing risk assessments, it's always like, whenever you see a new feature, there's always a new vulnerability that you can imagine can be exploited. So you always have to think about it that way too. And I think you had a really good point, in fact, from the point of view of businesses who want to implement these features. Like, I want to put a chatbot on to give my customers better service. Well, you should be sort of evaluating your options and what, not only what is the immediate customer experience, but what risks could there be to the customers if you're implementing a poorly secured type of solution in this direction.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, and I think there are positive uses too. For example, I brought up the Delta computer outage that just happened. I believe it was last week, where all the Delta systems went offline and they grounded all their flights because of a power outage at their data center, which is kind of baffling to me that they're all their backup plans and incident response, all that stuff kind of failed epically. But that's a whole other topic. But anyway, this article talks about how chatbots could have actually been very useful from a customer service perspective of, you could dial into, say, Delta's help desk, and a bot might be able to automatically rebook you by just having some simple interactions, by just like, can you tell me your flight number, your reservation number, those types of things, and then do some automation where it would take a human, to get on the phone with them, collect information, and where the actual human agents could probably be, their time can be better used to, help with some really urgent situations with customers that really having big problems. But like simple rebooks and things like that could have been handled by a bot over the phone or over the internet quite easily. So, there are some advantages to that companies, I think, are going to start seeing, especially when there's a crisis or if there's an outage or there's, I could see power companies really benefiting from from this when the power goes out in your house and you're like, hey, when's the power coming back on? I know we just had this recently, and we would get an automated text message back, when the but that was essentially a bot that we would call, and then we would interact with it, and it said, we'll send you a text message back. Those types of things I think we just need to see more of, and they work really well.
Yep, for sure. It all brings to mind too a phrase that I've been telling to a lot of my customers when I'm teaching security awareness or talking to managers about implementing security awareness, and that is the fact that so much of what businesses are doing these days is becoming automated, right? We're trying to hand off, the simple routine tasks and some of the simpler decisions to technology, which is great. It's going to be more reliable and make us more efficient. But on the other hand, what does that do to the decisions that your actual human employees are making? Well, they're making much more important decisions now than they were before. Every day now is full of important decisions, and that's why I think it's important for them to have good risk decisions, right? When they're looking at any kind of inquiries from unusual sources or whatever, right? They have to be a little more on the ball than ever before.
Absolutely.
So that was my little pitch. I don't know if you caught that or not. But.
I did. I caught that. Good job.
I'm not even going to insert a commercial. That was just so good. But that was our content for today, I think, is almost dried up.
Yeah, this was good. Covered a lot of ground.
Lots of good content, yeah. And I think we've been getting good activity on our Facebook page lately. Maybe you can let people know how to get to it and what they'll find.
Yeah, if you're on Facebook, just up there in the little search box, you can type in Shared Security and you'll find our fan page. So feel free to like us, and you'll also get updates to interesting things that Scott and I will post and comment about. Some of the topics we carry over into the podcast as well, so encourage you to check that out. You can also follow us on Twitter at SharedSec, and follow us there where we post, I'd say, similar information from Facebook onto Twitter. Sometimes maybe some different things, but
And we also have a sort of a newsletter notification process. Not everybody subscribes on iTunes, so for those that listen just off the website and you don't know when our next episode is published, we actually have a newsletter you can sign up for right on any of our episode pages where you're. If you're at the player right now, there's a newsletter sign-up link so you can get notified of the next time an episode comes out. And we'd love to have you on our list.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good. We've been getting a lot of feedback, too. We've been getting emails. We've getting messages on Facebook with some topic ideas. So thank you very much for submitting those. And we will be discussing those on a future podcast.
And if you have stories, anything that's happened to you recently, new kinds of fishing situations that you've come across, or just anything, we're always interested in hearing from you. So feel free to contact us. And that's it for today's show. And it's been great. Thanks very much, everybody. And anything last to say, Tom?
No, we'll talk to everybody on the next episode.
Hopefully in a month, give or take. Okay.
Sooner. That's right.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.